She came to me and credit was in the 400s and wanted to buy a house. I had never met anybody so dedicated. And I gave her a plan. And boy, does she tackle that plan. Within 6 months, she was able to get into her first house. Wow. Right. She tackled everything to the point where her car broke down. And it was the choice of you have to make your car payment because we're trying to get your credit up from the low 400s into the 600s. She was walking to work, believe it. No, I don't think I've seen anybody with that kind of, I don't know if I have that dedication. I might have said, I'm just going to go rent, but she walked to work until we were able to get her scores up enough, money saved, send her out on a pre-approval, and she bought a home.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Nedelka. I am your Realtor Mom, your Northeast Ohio Realtor, and this is my first podcast. So I wanted to start a podcast to help buyers and sellers, agents, kind of navigate through the real estate platform. And with my very first episode, I thought the most logical place to start was with my favorite lender, Michelle Layton. So Michelle, welcome.
Thanks.
I love her.
Thank you, Becky. I'm glad to be here. So I'm Michelle Layton with Cross Country Mortgage, and episode 1, here we go.
So I met Michelle, I think it's probably been 3 or 4 years ago now.
It's been a lifetime.
So she came to me. She wasn't my original lender that I went to on all transactions, but she happened to get involved in a transaction that someone else couldn't close. And I labeled her as my miracle worker, the lender that can get it all done. And she has been that. I don't think I've had a transaction that she's pre-approved that hasn't closed. And to a buyer, that is super critical. So what I want to talk about today is the mortgage world in 2025 and how Michelle plays a part in that and how she helps buyers get from starting the process, which we know is really with the lender. I know a lot of consumers think that the agent is where the process starts, but truly it starts with the lender. So Michelle, what are the biggest changes that you've seen in the mortgage and real estate world this year?
Well, I would be remiss not to go back to that transaction where we met, because I think the mortgage market, the real estate market is forever changing. So we have to adapt and navigate. And that was definitely a win that you and I had together.
Huge
so, and I think that speaks volumes to who we are as a team. And it speaks volumes to who you have to be to navigate this market in 2025. So definitely the hot topics this year were going to be the conforming loan limits have raised in 2025. So that's been huge. But of course, the always hot topic are the interest rates. So we have been navigating the ever changing rate climate ever since the COVID rates. Everybody wishes the COVID rates were the rates that were going to become normal. But it did take a national pandemic to get rates that low.
Right.
And we have been just navigating that market ever since. So I would say that has been one of the biggest changes is the rise and the fall of the interest rates. And that is a day by day, week by week event.
Yeah. And I think it was just yesterday, we were having a conversation about a lot of buyers' misconception when they get a pre-approval and wanting an interest rate now. So what do you think you could help buyers understand about interest rates right now? And what does a pre-approval and getting an interest rate on your pre-approval really mean?
So obviously interest rate is going to dictate your payment, but there are other factors that dictate that payment. So I think what is the best advice that I could give is when you are out in the market, everybody wants to know what their interest rate today is going to be. And I agree, that's important information, but I myself love to give people ranges on payments because I want them to be prepared. Your interest rate when you're searching for a home is actually not locked until you're under contract. So we try to have our buyers, our borrowers as prepared as possible. I'd rather have somebody over-prepared out in the market with some news, with their payments. That way there aren't any surprises at the end of the day. So we're trying to stay fluid when shopping through this market. I try to keep them over-prepared with rate ranges because ultimately the interest rate is their choice at the end of the day. They're going to get several options once they're under contract with what a par rate would be. And then you have options to buy down that interest rate. But the best part is making sure you're buying within your payment range.
Great. I agree. I know we've had this conversation over and over in the office. And one of the other things that we talk about a lot, and I want to get your perspective on, what do you think the biggest mistake that buyers make when they start the mortgage process? I know for me, I always want my buyers to shop it around. And yeah, that means I'm going to refer you to Michelle, but it's okay to shop with a bank. They're very different. I tell all my buyers these things. I don't have a benefit by selecting who you use as a lender. But what I know is that when you use a lender that I trust, I know that you're going to get awesome service, great communication, and I know that your loan is going to close because Michelle does the due diligence to best service the buyers through the mortgage process. So what do you think their biggest mistake might be?
Not being forthright with all of the information. And that's a two-sided equation. So as a mortgage lender, I actually got into this industry. I come from lending. I've been 30 years in lending, but once I began in mortgage, I took a different approach. So me, myself, knowing very well versed in credit, very well versed in loans, lending, credit scores, you name it, I was declined when I first applied for a mortgage, but I didn't know why. Nobody told me. There wasn't a phone I could pick up and call. I couldn't find that information anywhere. And so I had to do my own digging. And the reason I was declined was I didn't give them enough information on the assets that I had available to purchase my home. And that was a hard lesson. So a lot of people will fill out an application with very basic information, assuming maybe somebody on the other end is going to ask the other questions to fill in the blank. And that's not always the case. So I do my best to make sure we're deep diving that, gathering all the proper documentation, asking the questions, re-asking the questions, and digging for that information to make sure we can get you best qualified.
And so on the real estate side of those things, it's important. And a lot of buyers get frustrated that we do ask for that pre-approval up front. The reason for that is we don't want the buyer to be disappointed thinking that they can afford a certain dollar house. They've given bad information to lending and they come to me with a pre-approval that hasn't really been qualified. So it looks like they can afford it, but they might have fudged the information a little bit. I know that when I get a pre-approval from Michelle, she's verified income and she's had those conversations. The buyers might be disappointed if they can't get what they want, but what I'm confident of is if that you got a pre-approval that you didn't really qualify for by providing information that's not completely accurate, you're probably going to pay for inspections, you're probably going to pay for appraisal, and you're probably not going to close. So giving that information, I agree, up front is super critical to having a successful transaction and actually getting to sold.
Right. I think another, if we could keep on the mistake, whenever we're making any kind of purchase in our life, we like to lean into our spheres, our friend groups, our families. And while that can be great, it can also be negative, because people want to tell you their success stories, and their success story doesn't necessarily mean it's your success story. So if somebody wants to share what their interest rate was that they got on their home, you don't know what their circumstances were when they purchased. You don't know what their down payments were. You don't know what their credit score was, but they divulged maybe their interest rate to you, or they divulged how much they may have gotten off of the price of the house. So they're not necessarily giving you the full picture, but they're setting that expectation on you, which doesn't meet their guidelines. So somebody may end up disappointed.
Right. And also some lenders don't give the full picture. I know that when Michelle gives a pre-approval, her settlement and cost to close will include your title fees. It'll include everything that as a buyer you're going to be responsible for, where some lenders conveniently don't put that on the cost to close. And so then buyers get to the end and now all of a sudden they owe thousands of dollars more. That's a problem, because if they're not prepared with the cash, that's not going to close either, or we're scrambling at the end to try to figure out what to do. Sure. And unfortunately, a lot of those situations can't close.
Right.
So that communication up front and Michelle really giving you a true cost. So I know a lot of times buyers, I think they're hesitant to give the comparison because, well, she's just going to match it or whatever. That's not really the case. She wants to say, well, if this lender is not including these fees, I want to make sure mine is equal to what's being calculated. But then also let the buyer know that these additional fees are going to come up and they are going to be part of your closing. So you might want to ask the other lender for that information.
Sure. We want to be accurate. These are the biggest purchases that we make in our lives, and we don't make them very often.
Right. Hopefully.
So, right. And I mean, I've been in my home 16 years. I've definitely looked at other lenders' loan estimates and I've said, that looks fantastic. You're great where you are. I would love to earn your business, but everything looks in line, but I've also looked at loan estimates and there were items missing. So we want to make sure that people are prepared. Closing costs are always the hot topic. There's a lot that goes into that, into a closing cost. So again, I like to have somebody over prepared when we're issuing the pre-approval. They have a good idea, a nice range. And I usually range people between $2,000 and $3,000 of what their actual costs will be. I like to say I sleep well at night. I'd rather give you the information so you're over prepared and happy when you're closing your home rather than you're writing a check for way more than you thought you were going to and
Right.
you're upset with me. So I sleep well at night.
So I want to kind of transition over into our relationship and a realtor and a lender, like working together for the better of the client and how we partner together to make sure that we have good communication, that we have a good working relationship, and that I know that you're going to do everything to get them to close. And Michelle knows that I'm going to do everything on my side to get them to close. And yes, there's mistakes every now and again. And I always know if I make a boo-boo, which let's be honest, doesn't happen that often. But if I make the boo-boo, Michelle's going to be like, you're fine. We're going to get through this. And we do.
Yeah.
So having that working relationship definitely helps. And I do consider Michelle to be my number one lending partner because I trust what she's going to do for the clients, and her work ethic is very, very much in line with what I think. So why do you think that communication between the lender and the realtor, not just us, but any lender and realtor, why is that important?
Oh gosh. Well, one, you're going into the biggest transaction of somebody's life. So it's important for you to know not necessarily all the figures and the details, right? So there is certain information we're not going to disclose, but you need those highlights. You need the bullet points. So when I issue the pre-approval, you're always going to know max purchase prices. And I put bumpers on my pre-approvals for what maximum HOA and property taxes would be. So that leaves us room. So say Becky's out shopping with the client and max is $300,000. She also knows how I issue a pre-approval. I have those taxes, say, capped at $6,000 a year. So maybe we can bump up that purchase price when she finds homes that are lower on the property taxes. So we communicate a lot during that transaction because every house is different. So she may shoot me a text. It's an open line communication like, hey, will this property work? And we just talk it through to see how we can navigate that.
Right. I do know that when I work with Michelle, like I know that I can text her on my way to a showing. I can text her prior to a showing. I can call her from the showing and I can say, hey, this is the address. Where can my buyer, like it might be a $250,000, $300,000 house, but I know those taxes, like she said, I can tell all of my buyers with confidence that this is going to work because it falls within the parameters because Michelle, unlike many lenders, gives me that HOA and tax max for the property. So if I know we're pre-approved up to $300,000 and these are my taxes, but the taxes she gave me are $4,500 and we're sitting at $3,000, that's over $100 a month difference in your payment. So I know we've got wiggle room, and Michelle will give me that number. She'll send it over to my buyer. And if my buyer approves, I'll get that number for them. And so we communicate, and these things, time is of the essence, and the market is shifting and it's always changing, like Michelle said, but there are times where we really need to know. And what I love the most is I respect her time, but like I also know that if I need something on a Saturday, on a Sunday, Michelle's got it and she's going to get it to me. Even if I say, hey, don't worry, I'm not in a huge rush, I get it like super fast. So that communication and that working relationship is huge.
I have you in an hour and I try to what is this?
Last night, I think you said, can I get back to you in an hour? And it was like 15 minutes. It was crazy. I was like, whoa, Michelle said this works and this is what we can do. So
under promise, over deliver, right?
Right. Can you think of a time when our teamwork may have saved a deal?
There's been multiple.
I literally use you for 90% of my transaction. We can't name names, but you can probably say the scenario and I'm going to know right off the bat what it is.
I mean, obviously the first transaction we met on. And that was a fluke. I mean, we met on a fluke because that particular person, I handled a lot of that person's family's mortgages.
You're that person's go-to family lender.
Uh-huh.
And I had never heard of Michelle. And I was like, I mean, the lender that I have on this has never failed me on a pre-approval.
You
and I don't know
me.
how we're sitting here with my client not being able to buy this house. And she said, well, can I call Michelle? And I'm like, well, you can call anybody you want at this point, because right now we're not moving forward. And let me tell you, when you got that deal closed, I absolutely was like, well, you're my new lender. Like,
you
this
drilled
was
me.
a miracle.
You called me with so many questions.
I did. Because for me, like, getting my clients, I need that certainty that we're going to get through this process. Buyers are spending money on inspections. They're spending money on appraisals. And it's a lot out of pocket if it doesn't close. So for me, knowing that I have a solid pre-approval is probably one of the biggest pieces to submit an offer. I don't want to submit an offer where I think there's a chance it's not going to close, because then I know it's not necessarily my fault, but the buyers, it's the agent's fault. So I have complete confidence in your pre-approvals. And that was such, like, I'm so blessed that that transaction happened, because it led me to having Michelle be my go-to lender.
And then you had the one that I wasn't the lender on, but it was our team and it was your listing. And so I think that was another one. And it was like one of those completely short-term closes, stressful situations.
Oh,
Yeah.
That was the the foreclosure one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So time was of the essence.
I had another one where you were the lender and my buyer, and this is a miracle. We had an FHA transaction.
Oh.
And we had, I mean, let's be honest, most people will quote 30 to 45 days for FHA. Michelle doesn't get 30 to 45 days. Michelle gets a 21-day close, because Michelle can do a 21-day close. And so I think I gave it probably 30 days because it was earlier on. And my buyer called me like panicking, because she was in a very volatile situation that she needed to get out of, physically needed to get out of the situation. I said, Michelle, I know this is FHA, but is there anything that we can do to get this transaction closed sooner? And never in a million years did I think we would close as fast as we did. 16 days.
Oh, yeah.
16 days on an FHA loan. And I was like, this woman's a saint. She got it done. And I know it took extra work, but like Michelle, that's why I say Michelle and I are like truly a team, because we both operate with the belief that our clients are number one and we don't exist without them. So seeing her do that for this client, knowing they're pulling out stops, and there probably was some additional costs for lending to get those things pushed through so quickly. And it happened. And I can say my buyer was incredibly grateful. And I know that I've earned her as a client in the future, because she has reached out again. And I know she'll use Michelle again, because who wouldn't? Like, you went over and above, and that's, again, part of the teamwork. So I know we've saved deals that.
No, absolutely. That does speak volumes to why it's so important to have that communication. And we've been lucky enough to become friends then throughout the process.
Yes.
So we've been able to develop the, working relationship and an actual friendship throughout it. So that's been fun too.
I think Michelle talked me off the ledge earlier today. Quite honestly. It's been a crazy day, doing a first podcast, like, it's a little bit of stress in this. I'm going to be honest.
We got stains on our shirt. Our hair is falling out. Like, the whole nine is going on today.
We're real people and we're really friends. So I definitely think that we've had a long relationship. We've partnered together for events. If Michelle's hosting an event, I'm going to be there. It's one of those things. And she keeps me in check too. Like, when I send her a message, I'm like, hey, how does this sound? She's like, ooh, you sound kind of bitchy. So like, she can call me out too. And that relationship, I think, helps. Like, when, we do have frustrations when we work with clients, and that's part of the business, which is okay. But at the end of the day, we never want our clients to think we're upset. So if I do feel like I get worked up, she can talk me off the ledge, and I feel like I can sort of do the same for her, but she doesn't get worked up like I do. I'm high maintenance. I don't know. Not really high maintenance, but
therapy.
But I'm the mom, and I need to get it all, like, that OCD-ness. My kids make me crazy. I don't have gray hair
I
anymore
mean, I
today.
think I put a no soliciting sign on her door or made her get one because, you had to reel her in a little bit.
Yeah, because these people just show up and knock on my door and I let them in, and I feel like I need all the things, including the guys that I have helping me with my marketing now. They maybe showed up at my door and I was like, wow, this sounds great. She's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, really, this is going to go, we're going to have a podcast. And look, here we are.
Here we are.
So this is like, this really is super exciting. Mortgage mom, because you have a son.
Do.
And Realtor Mom, I have a son and a daughter and 2 bonus kids, I would say. As parents, we have to give a lot of tough love. I give lots of tough love.
I get to witness it.
But if you could give one piece of tough love advice to buyers, what would that be? I know I put you on the spot for this.
No, pay yourself first. Start saving your money even before it's well before the thing you want to do, whether it's for a house, a car, whatever it is, your future. Start saving your money. Start paying yourself first. It's probably if I had a regret, and I don't live my life on many regrets, but that is something I wish I would have started earlier. Open up a separate bank account, something you cannot access. I teach this to people, and I don't care if it's $10 or $10,000. Start paying yourself.
I listen to that, don't I?
Sometimes.
I don't shop a lot or anything, do I? I don't run up.
I mean, we have these conversations.
I even have to take these tough love conversations because I do like to shop and I do like to buy things.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just even when I talk about myself in the mortgage that I might be looking into, like I've been in my house for 20 years and the reality is I know I look like I'm 20, but I'm really not. And I'm going to be looking to change my housing and maybe get a ranch and things like that as I get old. My kids are moving out. My son's in Arizona. My daughter's going to be moving out at some point. And the reality is I don't need to be where I am. So I talked to Michelle about my personal, like, what do I need to do? And I've gotten some tough love. We're going to leave it at that.
That just comes from years I've always helped people with their credit. And I actually turned that into a business some years ago. But money is very important. Money is a hot topic. It's a triggering topic. It's the conversation nobody wants to have. But it's also very rewarding when you can get control of your financial situation. So we can alleviate a lot of stress in our households and our lives just by simply putting yourself first. We pay everybody else everything all day long. We are just as important. Let's pay ourselves.
Right. So what's, I'm sure you've got crazy, funny stories, whether it be a situation you yourself, situation with a buyer, any funny, crazy stories that you've run across in your years in lending?
I have my favorite, I call her my favorite borrower of all times. We'll call her DB right now. She'll know who she is if she sees this. But she came to me and credit was in the 400s and wanted to buy a house. And if I tell you, I never met anybody so dedicated. I will always have that conversation with somebody. If you have a goal in your life, I'll sit there with you. I can't do the things for you, but I'll give you the way to go. And I gave her a plan. And boy, does she tackle that plan. She went after it hard. And within 6 months, she was able to get into her first house. But
wow.
Right.
6 months is impressive.
She tackled everything to the point where her car broke down. And it was the choice of you have to make your car payment because we're trying to get your credit up from the low 400s into the 600s at least to buy. She was walking to work. I couldn't believe it. Like, no, I don't think I've seen anybody with that I don't know if I have that dedication. I might have said, I'm just going to go rent, but she walked to work until we were able to get her scores up enough, money saved, send her out on a pre-approval, and she bought a home. And I remember she invited me over to see her home. And a lot of people say they're going to invite me over for the cookout. A lot of times that invite does not show up. Have you gotten the invites?
I have.
Have you? Okay, because I hear it.
I have clients that they were great throughout the whole process. They did everything that I had asked. They they truly went with everything, got everything done timely, and they were just over the moon excited. They weren't buying anything spectacular. It was their first home, and they were just so happy. They're like, you made this happen. I said, I facilitated it. I didn't make it happen. You made it happen. You did the things that you needed to do. You listened to lending, and you truly did that. And I did get an invitation, and I so badly wanted to go, but we were driving home from vacation.
You and your vacations.
I mean, I liked the sunshine. John was on the vacation, and he doesn't have the personality that I do, so he wouldn't just stop. We were tired, and I would have been probably embarrassed to show up how I looked because, I want to try to at least look like I somewhat practice real estate and don't look like I rolled out of bed. But I have gotten the invite, and I'm waiting for another invite once everything is ready at another home. They were amongst some of my favorite buyers.
I want to come.
Well,
But
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. So that was an honor. I showed up at her home, and I mean, just to see how proud she was, and she deserved that. And she had it meticulously decorated. But she became one of my biggest referrals. Everybody around her that wanted to buy a home started calling me. So
yeah. I have some buyers and sellers really that have been gracious enough to give the referral to me and say, hey, you've got to use her. And then in turn, you really should call Michelle. And with that, I do get a lot of listings as well. And selling's a big part of my business. Do you have any advice that you would maybe give to sellers about what buyers are experiencing and how to help them prepare for what's to come with the offers?
For the sellers, I would say to be prepared that some of the buyers are going to be asking for seller concessions to help cover their closing costs. It doesn't make them any less qualified. It's just maybe how the pre-approval is set up because we are preparing them for this big purchase in life. When the pre-approval comes across, or when I'm sending the pre-approval from my desk, I have verified income and assets, and we're just setting them up for success in their new home. So by them needing some seller concessions doesn't make them any less qualified. And I would also say when you get that FHA or VA pre-approval, please don't discount that. Those are valuable pre-approvals as well.
And I feel like a lot of those buyers can often potentially even do a conventional loan, but it's more financially sensible for them to go FHA so they can do the things that they need to do and just set themselves up to not fail and potentially hit foreclosure because they used all their cash. And honestly, I work with a lot of first-time home buyers, and I don't know. I think I can count on one hand and not even use many of the fingers how many times a condition of an FHA or VA loan has actually been a thing, because most of the time you can work through that. And it's always good to really have that conversation with your agent. If you're on the other side of it, let's have a conversation to make sure sellers understand those loans aren't bad loans. It could work out better for everybody. It doesn't really delay the process. It's not an FHA inspection. It's an FHA appraisal. That's huge. Like, people think it's an inspection and it's not. Really, it's making sure the home is safe. Safe and secure, which is what we want. And as an agent, when we're walking through homes, I do look for those things. Like, if I'm talking to a seller, I want them to know these could be FHA issues. Like, these outlets aren't grounded or they're not GFCI protected. Like, an agent should know what is going to be coming up in those potential appraisals. So, one of the other things I want to briefly hit on is, you mentioned concessions, but also buyer broker compensation is another thing. I know there was a big shift in about a year ago where the NAR came in and kind of changed how our compensations are working. And they're no longer published in the MLS, instantly signed for with the listing agent setting them. Buyers agents can set their own compensation now, and buyers have to sign for that. But do you think the responsibility and expectation is that it still really is a seller expense? I know that's how I kind of prep my sellers and I also the buyers, because since back in time, it's always been a seller expense, and it's just now more transparent up front.
Yeah, I think it's just letting everybody know where the funds are actually going. It's coming in, everything is being laid out and displayed. It's the verbiage. It's letting you know what is in that price of the house. Everything's been negotiable, but again, somebody buying a home, we're looking at the funds and them asking for that compensation to be taken care of by the seller. I understand before it was just assumed. Now we're just out laying it out in writing for everybody.
And really, for me, kind of one of the biggest things that I really try to make sellers understand is it doesn't really matter what percentage an agent charges. What the seller should focus on is their bottom line and what they're going to walk away with, because it's the number that you're walking away versus the percentage. You can have a really high percent that you're paying and still make more than an agent that's only asking for a couple percent because their offer is just that much lower. So sellers need to be educated in, the understanding of compensation. And as an agent, I like to make sure my buyers are educated, my sellers are educated, and I know that Michelle's going to educate them on the lending side of things as well. So is there anything else that you think, you want to add, touch on that we didn't? Because I think we're probably coming up to time to wrap up. And I just want to give you the opportunity to fill any blanks.
Yeah, actually, I want to say that I think pretty much we can summarize everything that we talked about it's great communication between all parties involved. So whether it's between the lender and the realtor, the lender and the borrower, the seller and the realtor, but if everybody is confident in the communication and who you're working with, that makes everything go smoother and it's a win-win for everybody.
It's going to be simple, smooth, and sold. That's how we're going to get you to the end. Obviously, I'd like to thank Michelle for being my first podcast guest. This has been super exciting. And like I said at the beginning, I don't know that I would have wanted anybody else to be my first guest. She is my go-to. So
thank you.
If you're a buyer and you're in the market, looking in the end of 2025, there's still time. It's still a good market. Getting into 2026, I would recommend that Michelle be your first call and get your pre-approval. Even if you're not thinking about doing it like in the next 30 days, it's really, really good to probably start that process a lot sooner. 6 months is not too soon, but call Michelle. She will not steer you wrong. And if there's something, a loan type she can't cover, she'll tell you. Like, you're not going to get any sort of fluff. No. You're going to get a straight answer. And I trust her, and I think she should be your first call with lending. And then obviously you're going to call me because I'm your go-to Northeast Ohio realtor, and we make a great team. Communication's going to be there. And not only is she my favorite lender, she's one of my favorite friends.
Well, thank you, Becky. It's been an honor to be here with you today.
Thank you. So again, I'm Rebecca Nedelka with eXp Realty. This is Michelle Layton with Cross Country Mortgage. And between the two of us, we are going to keep the process simple, smooth, and sold.